most of Asians don't believe this.
Well, I want to know, is this zone, this zone in which you have the parting of the ways, is that where you have been living as a historian all of your life?
No, where I've been living as a historian most of my life is the impact of invasions on the minds, the cultures, the civilizations of people, and the disaster that befell people by virtue of these invasions and the character of their societies before the nature of the change after it, and proving that most people who call themselves civilized are not even civil. And most of we think of as civilization is mechanization, is mechanics.
But where people are likely to think that the body of work that you have concentrated on has to do with pointing up errors in European history, the fact is that you have taken a worldview, certainly looking specifically at the African contributions and the impact on Africa, but certainly not excluding Europe either.
Not excluding Europe, but not leaving out my critical analysis of the Hindu faith and the concept of untouchability.
If we have this global view that you have been researching and writing about, how would people understand and appreciate history differently from the way they do now?
If most of the world's history in the last 500 years have been written to make Europeans look good at the expense of other people. And if we look at history honestly, we will level the historical playing field to the point where you will see civilization in a whole lot of places that you did not previously see it. You see savagery by new interpretations in a whole lot of other places that you did not previously see it. World War I, World War II was a form of savagery of the highest order, both with European motivations. And we like to think of Europe as being the origin of civilization. It is the origin of a certain kind of order and mechanics. But they are not even civil, because they declare war on the cultures of all people they meet, because they cannot handle their culture, cannot handle their language. So they try to homogenize the people into their language and culture so they can control them.
In this respect, are Europeans unique? What about the Punic Wars? What about the Crusades?
For the Crusade, that's a different, or the Punic Wars was really a war over trade in the Mediterranean. The Romans did not want to share the Mediterranean trade. They wanted it all. And when the Romans moved over, captured Hannibal, destroyed Carthage, the Romans did not try to take all of the cultures of the people, but the Romans said that if you want to be accepted as a citizen, you have to be like the Romans. A whole lot of people decided that Roman citizenship wasn't worth discarding of their culture. Then a lot of people went toward Rome almost like Saturday night horse, looking for Roman citizenship so they could be accepted. This case is unique in as much as the Romans declared war on the cultures and people that didn't resemble Rome. Remember now, the Roman Empire rose in North Africa, and it fell in North Africa, except for Africa, that would have been no Roman Empire, and that there was more Africans killed African Christians killed in the amphitheaters of North Africa than people killed in the arena in Rome. No one wrote any romantic literature about it, so therefore it was not preserved. Romance generally preserves things and calls things to attention. You want to remember it, get a lady in there.
But in what sense, then, does this differ from the motivations, you say, are attached to the European-inspired wars of World War I and World War II?
Well, the European World War I, they had a broader base. The Roman War and the Punic War had mostly a Mediterranean base. But that's all the world they knew. You could have called it a world war because that's what they knew as the world.
That's true.
Of that day. And so if you really can compare it with World War I and World War II, as much they didn't know what the other world was. They had no great knowledge of China and and the vast world stretching beyond of the Americas.
At this point, Dr. Clarke, we'll take a little break. I'm your Trace Lead, and we're having a long, extended, wonderful discussion with the master teacher, Dr. John Henrik Clarke. When we come back, we'll talk about the emotionalism of history and the effort still to sell us a bill of goods. This is WBAI 99.5 FM. I'm your Trace Lead, and we are in our fundraising mode. We're offering today, as a special incentive to you to support this station, a premium package. And a premium package would include a videotape of this interview. It's being videotaped even as we speak. A videotaped interview and Dr. John Henrik Clarke's book titled Reflections of History with Dr. John Henrik Clarke. That is the title of the video. The title of the book is Who Betrayed the African Revolution? For $125, you get the taped interview, which is being done now. For $125 to WBAI. For $150, you get the videotape and the book titled Who Betrayed the African Revolution. This is WBAI 99.5 FM. The number to call is 212-279-3400. We have 2 calls on the line. Thank you so much. 212-279. Ladysmith Black Mambazo brings us into our second segment with Dr. John Henrik Clarke, the master teacher and historian, writer, lecturer, reviewer, chief cook, bottle washer, and just about everything else. Let's talk, Dr. Clarke, about the emotionalism that especially African Americans have had in recent years about history. Is it fair to say that we have in many instances been far too emotional about history?
We've been a little too emotional and not enough instructional. We've talked about it more than we've read it. Mm-hmm. And we've argued about it when once you read it and analyze it, you can eliminate the argument. Because of the uniqueness of the African American position among African people, because each one of the African people away from home sometimes reflects the nature of their oppression. The African American had to develop certain techniques and certain attitudes that other Africans away from home did not have to develop, because he was obviously a minority, and his oppressor made him well aware of that. And he was in a country that gave him the illusion of democracy while letting him know that he wasn't brought here to be given democracy. And Christianity was an element of his control, and that his oppressor had taken out of his mind the memory of the physical, geographical state, and had also taken out of his mind the state of mind people generally create away from the physical, geographical state. Now, let me explain what I'm talking about, because an Italian can be in America 5 generations and still look back to the nation of his historical beginning. And you can call him Italian American. He says, I'm Italian. And you've been here about the same time, and you say I'm an American because that's what you wish to be. And sometimes you don't say you're African because you don't see no welcome signs in the direction of Africa. So you have certain confusions that other people do not have. The African people in the Caribbean have another set of confusions, but not the same kind of confusions. They are a physical majority. And although they were enslaved, and slavery was brutal there also, they have the illusion of belonging to the physical state of their oppressor and being part of the apparatus of their oppressor. And some feel proud of being part of the British Empire, of the Dutch overseas holding of the Portuguese. And so they became black Portuguese, black Dutch, and black English. And all they wrote meaningfully of Africa. The concept of Pan-Africanism was started by 3 Trinidadians: H. Sylvester Williams, C.L.R. James, and George
Padmore.
Mm-hmm. And not only that they never succeeded in uniting Trinidad, but a fact which needs to be mentioned. A little heartbreak to me, because I knew the 2 of them, James and Padmore. Neither one of them, of the 3, neither one had a lasting relationship with a black woman. Sounds like a contradiction. Is a contradiction. What I'm saying is that Africa's a different parts and a different oppressor differs in contradictions and reaction to the oppressor, but they all have a set of confusions that I wouldn't exchange with the devil in hell.
The same myth-making that you talked about occurring primarily in the white world about world history, to some degree has occurred in the black world as well, the black academic world about history.
More tragic.
How do you react to that?
React to it because we are more reacting to someone else's reaction to history than the honest history that we have created.
What are some of the myths that black scholars have propagated themselves about black history?
Well, some of them are propagated. One, I think the biggest myth that they propagated is the fact that I'm an American citizen just like anyone else. Any bigoted cab driver can change your mind about that. And they don't know they wasn't brought to America to be given citizenship or democracy. And when they said liberty and justice for all and drew the picture of the all, you wasn't in that picture. You're still not in that picture.
So what schools of thought do you see now in terms of history and the attempt to rewrite history in the black academic world? What schools of thought do you see developing, and what difficulties do you see they pose?
Well, the schools of history that I see, that in fact that I'm a part of, is to write history to show the global connection of African people one to the other. The African people, the pre-Columbian presence of African people and our relationship to people in the South Sea Islands, and the African presence in India, and so that we are not an isolated people, that we as a people have already achieved what other people have advocated. A relationship with different people in the world without a hint of a wall between the people that we related to. We've achieved something Europe has never achieved, and in my opinion never will, because Europe's attitude toward people was wrong from the beginning, and it still is, because Europe has a concept that they were ordained by some mysterious God to rule over the rest of the world. And they have the illusion that the world waited in darkness for them to bring the light, when as a matter of factual, just basic truth, the European was the last branch of the human race to come into the light of what can be called civilization. But I'm very hopeful about the history of African people, when we are turning great historians in Africa like Sheikh Anta Diop and Abraham Baby Keke and Joseph Gazebo. These are great African historians, and Father M. Bain, and now we see a meeting between them and African American historians, and we see some Caribbean people understanding the tremendous contribution a small but significant group of Caribbean historians. Some people are so dissatisfied with Eric Williams, they quite forget that Eric Williams was really one of the finest minds produced in the Caribbean area, especially in the field of historical interpretation. And James, one of the most brilliant men of the 20th century. I mean, I've never met a human being who could lecture on more different subjects correctly than C.R.R. James. I was with him in London once, and we were amusing and drinking and lying and doing every damn thing colleagues do when they get together. And James was lecturing on stained glass windows, a subject that interests me just a little less than going to the moon. but doing it well, bringing sense to it. Any man that can make me love cricket, I don't even understand the name cricket, I have no concern for it all. It can make me understand that cricket is a class struggle. It's brilliant. And when he finished the lecture, I said, James, I bet you can lecture on the origin of shoelaces. He said, and by the way, he started a lecture on the origin of shoelaces. I don't know a single thing that man didn't know.
But there is now a burgeoning effort especially with people calling themselves critical race theorists, who are infusing a new element to the debate about black history. What do you think about this emerging school?
Well, some of them are exhibitionists, and some of them are trying to impress the white community with that verbal gymnastics. A few of them are sincere. But I could have made it big if I wanted to impress the white academic community. But I spent a great deal of time debunking the white academic community. I did an essay for a conference in New Orleans called The Myth of Black Anti-Semitism, and got jumped on by so many people at my school, and I wasn't tenured then, and I was associate professor. When I brought in my documents to prove my point, there was nothing they could do about it, because we're not only not anti-Semitic, we have a sentimental attachment to the Jewish people based on our reading or misreading of the Bible. In slavery, we wanted to connect with the people who had escaped from something. So the Exodus became more real to us than to them. It still is, for that matter. Well, that got them off my back, at least temporarily. Because just as a matter of truth, while there might be individuals with some warped ideas about the Jewish people, but African American people in general have a very favorable view of the Jewish people as a people. And that's true.
I had sensed, and in fact a caller not too long ago, we got into this discussion about history, this identification with Egypt particularly, and the great civilization that it was. This is not to say that it wasn't, but I worry about the tendency to fixate on certain aspects of our history without making the history itself, or the lessons that we should learn from that history, relevant to our struggles today, or helping us to define our path for tomorrow.
Well, I agree with that, because I say that all history is a current event. Everything that has ever happened continues to happen one way or the other. This is why I bring up the example that if I can teach you how Africans ran empires and great trades across the Sahara, and you can't run a candy store in Harlem, you miss my point. Because all history is about today. No matter how far I go back, it's still about the stimulus of today.
Let's take a look at major developments that we have ourselves, blacks, whites, everybody else, we have misinterpreted. Let's talk about some of the African American historical events that we have misinterpreted. What would you say some of them would be?
We misinterpreted the nature of our protests and radicalism. We misinterpreted the golden age of black protests and African awareness, the 19th century.
How have we
misinterpreted? This is why we've gone wrong in the 20th century.
How have we misinterpreted?
Because we do not understand that what they were trying to get is what slavery and colonialism took away in the 19th century. In the 20th century, we were fighting to join and to share bigotively in our oppressors' piece of pie. In the 19th century, We wanted to make our own pie of our own kitchen and our own ingredients. We wanted back nationhood in the physical sense. This is what the Liberia migration movement was about. And this is what the internal movement of Pop Singleton was about, resettling on the free land, the land in America was unsettled. The internal settlement. While there was another, the so-called the Negro Convention movement. All the discussion was about the one thing essential to nationhood: land. Land is the basis of nation.
So Pop Singleton and the Exodusters understood this?
They understood it better than we understand it now. Chief Sam movement, Ghanaian was going to take Africans back, and the African free states sold all their belongings and gathered at the ports and to be taken back to Africa. Chief Sam never showed up. It was a tragedy that had its tinge of beauty and hope.
Is this what Marcus Garvey understood?
No, Marcus Garvey just back to Africa. Marcus Garvey's real projection came mainly from Booker T. Washington. And understand, not to take anything from Marcus Garvey, but the man who came before Marcus Garvey, who was really a little more successful than Marcus Garvey in getting people back to Africa, not more successful at organization, was Bishop Henry McNeil Turner. There's a good book on him by a man named Redkey called Black Exodus. And he was a minister, and mostly in Georgia and the like, and he thought because he was light complected he was entitled to certain things over and above that of the blacks. And we discovered that while there are certain places you get exceptions for your lighter complexion, but in America, our crude oppressor put all of the gradations and all of the colors in one bag, shook up the bag, and put one name on the bag, and we know what the name is, and we need not repeat it here.
So, did we lose our concept? Did we lose our commitment to nationhood?
We lost our commitment. Lost our commitment to nationhood. We lost our commitment to the maintenance of institutions. People rise and fall within the context of institutions. While this came into the 20th century, we quite forgot that Bethune-Cookman College and a lot of the black colleges was built with black women with their 50-cent luncheons at railroad stations when blacks couldn't eat in the dining room, selling 50-cent box lunches. We built schools that way. You don't have that kind of commitment in the 20th century. You have a kind of a selfishness. Then you have what I call the NACP syndrome. Just to be a part of their thing. To soak up education through osmosis just by getting close to white people. Then in the 19th century and early in the 20th century, we had schools and church basements, and schools any place we can find space. A person with 7th grade education could teach school, and did. Education became something we longed for, and it became a mission, an obsession. Then it became free, and we started running from it.
So what happened historically?
We listened to different drummers, and I think maybe the advent of television harmed a lot, mass communication. Something took our attention. I was just today talking about how well we got along when we not only had no television. I can remember in my community growing up in Columbus, Georgia, when there was one radio on the block. One radio on the block. And we would gather around that radio to hear of all things Amos and Andy in fights. There was another radio at a grocery store. In great important events, we'd gather around the grocery store to listen to the radio. And yet our lives were full of activity. And we got some happiness, and we did things, and so much was built around the church.
Well, I would argue that these changes affected the entire society, but why did it have, or did it seem to have, inordinate adverse impact on the black community?
Well, it's like a spring being pressed down. Then you take the pressure off it. Then it springs forth sometimes a little higher than it would normally, because pressure's been on it so long. And I think we kind of became a prisoner to a new kind of superficial freedom.
Throughout the transformation we've undergone just the same. We've had people who served as beacons, I suppose, would be the good word to use, as beacons in our community, who served as reference points and who served as the locus for our attention and giving us ideas of what it is we needed to do, what it is we needed
worth
to be
and
thinking.
direction.
Yes.
Giving us a sense of worth.
Yes.
A sense of direction.
But we've had flip sides of the coin as well. We have had, we've had Father Divine, we have had Carlos Cooks, we've had Mary McLeod Bethune, we've had no shortage of leaders. Has leadership itself undergone the same kind of transformation that you said the community as a whole has undergone, where as an aggregate group we had a particular psyche, we had a particular mindset, and it changed dramatically? Did the people who were pointing the way, the people who served as our beacons, also undergo this change?